A talk. A talk on the role of education in personality development. Hello and welcome to this wonderful event, a talk show, an elocution where I get the whole stage to myself to talk to you about some of my very favorite topics. Today it's going to be all about the role or impact education has on my personality in my personal development. I will not tell you my name, as I have figured over the years that it's not relevant anymore. But I am a flower like any other, which has been used over centuries in coronations, funerals, weddings, graduation ceremonies, house or office warming ceremonies. Basically, the meaning is therapy and floral leafy decoration. So, now that the first step of introduction is out of the way from my end, it's important to understand who the audience is. We'll take a moment, or a lot longer, to say our names to ourselves and come up with a profound explanation to our own holistic existence of what our value is on this planet and at which instance are we willing to be associated with a floral leafy decoration. If I can guess the right answer, that's when we are learning. What I mean then to say is that when education is coming into our systems through the channel of therapy, counselling, consultancy, or as plainly said, through a teacher, a prophet, a sage, or a guru, it's too obvious now how simple this concept is. Our personality is as far as our name goes, and its dignity is in this universe. I'll repeat that. Our personality is as far as our name goes, and its dignity in this universe. It's a lot easier now to answer the next question. It's going to make you think that I have got the sequence wrong because it has the word first in it. But when in doubt, you can't reach me because you have a better answer to this in your own core, and the meaning of your name and its existence is going to frame up a unique answer to it. The very first question then to ask is, why is it important to develop personality? Or an even more basic question, what is good personality? In a lot of families and cultures across the world, kids are not allowed to be a part of discussions. Matters pertaining to financial allocations, purchase of property, the school selected for the children, the hospitals they should go to, the food to be cooked at home, or even the person they'll marry. Now one could think that why would a child be involved in such serious, big people conversations and choices? Let me elaborate on just two of these, but you'll get an idea on how I'm thinking. Financial allocations. Wouldn't it be great to tell your child how much you earn? For instance, let's talk about me. I earn 10,000 a month. I volunteer at a nearby school, a rural school, and that's the max they would pay me. I have no savings because I spent it all off. So now I pay 3,000 out of that 10,000 to the veggie uncle who visits our apartment building every morning and is kind enough to bring our choice of vegetables and fruits to our doorstep whenever we need anything. And we do very often, we do need a lot of things very often. We don't indulge in any daily payments, but he does place a small handwritten note on how far we are from that 3,000. It could be negative or positive. He tells us, and we just pay him and eat healthy food. I sometimes pay him a little more depending on who paid me more at the start of the month and sometimes later at the end. We don't really follow many rules there at all. It's a friendly association. The only provision is that the supplies are fresh and my son Kabir at 7 can pick up anything from the footpath he lays his makeshift shop on. My kid also gets a freebie from veggie uncle every now and then. He gets to learn the names of the products in 2 to 3 languages, and they also talk a lot about a lot of things. Kabir loves his van, his new scooter, his pen and notepad, the huge plastic sheet that becomes a shade for when it's raining or it's too hot in Mangalore. Another 3,500 goes to Malika. She used to clean the house when my mom lived with us. Mom was on a wheelchair, but she was full of life. She used to sing, write poetry, stories, and life experiences that we had in life, life experiences that we had while traveling around the world. She never earned a dime, never had a job offer or colleagues, but is more popular than a lot of people I know. She eventually got bored and wanted to shift back to the retirement village in Kolkata, where she has a lot of friends. The reason she had even come to live with me was because Dad passed away last year and she needed to detox from a life of 50 years with him and 6 months without. Malika had been a good friend for too long and we just couldn't let her go. She spends more than 500 from those 3,500 on chocolates, bread, eggs, grated coconuts, hair ties, sometimes slippers, and more every month. Again, Kabir and I have no idea what it costs to get any of these things, and Malika never really reduces the size of that sweet grin she has on each time she brings something for us. She's 2 years older to me and is the best colleague I've ever had. It's almost every day that she cooks something special for us and brings it for us to taste. She tells us about the different events in the close by temples, marketplaces, and neighborhood. Her younger daughter is a cancer survivor and a fashion designer looking to study facial makeup. Her husband is a brave fisherman who wades through the Arabian Ocean every other morning to sell his catch at the beach. He only recently returned from South Africa, where he worked as an oil pump technician in one of the oil reserves. He does both his jobs because he's passionate about them and now has bought himself a van that he rents out to his close friends for money. He spends a lot of time talking to Kabir in Kannada and Tulu about lots of things. Kabir finds it extremely useful when he has to complain about me. So, 6,500, that's our definite expenses. And there are a few other petty things too, like Kabir's monthly coding classes of 7,500 for every class for our classical music class, weekly shawarmas and biryanis, and for the rest, his dad pays. His dad's not comfortable with sharing his expenses with us, and I respect it. When I say expenses, it's the calculations with us, and I respect it. His name means coronation. His name means coronation. It is very important and common Indian name, but I'm sure it has a meaning the whole planet understands. With this open communication about financial use, Kabir learns a lot, not just some calculations, but also understands the relationships that have emerged from a quasi barter system in the name of business and money. School selection. When Kabir and I were in New Zealand, Wellington, we walked up to a few schools and spent a day or two in those schools. He played with the toys and the books, spoke to the staff and the teachers, and and he was about 3 around that time. We had many picnics under the trees in and around the school. We took a lot of pictures too. After dark, when we got home, we spoke about his visits, and he was very happy to choose the closest one to our house. At 3, he was able to make a choice based on the comfort of getting in and out of school over the reputation it held. It wasn't a bad school at all. If it's a school, it can't be bad. And most importantly for me, Kabir was studying there. So it simply had to be the best school. There were a lot of gardens and flowers around him, and none of them were plucked for any ceremony. The feeling of being alive and emerging into a natural change in form was not as painful as to be pinched out and placed on the feet of another being or thing just for a day, or even worse, just a photograph. But then again, a photograph is what education does to people, and they can treasure that moment of truth forever. Sometimes I get eaten by an animal or pollinated by insects. It's far more enriching to be a part of animal feces than to be thrown in with a whole lot of self-styled artificial ornaments made of pins, needles, bad plastic, and shiny paper after a ceremony. And I guess that is because there's a huge discussion on global warming. That's another part of education and what to do with it. I think it is natural. It's the beginning of a new kind of end. Not the end as in a sad finish where we all perish and Armageddon becomes reality. It's far more subtle, really. It's where the end is not given half as much importance. Education screams out in our textbooks for centuries that the world is round. We will not end. We will just keep rolling on, and there's no way we can get bored either. There's just so much to learn, to imagine, to become who we ever want to be. And it's as simple as making a phone call to a 10-digit number from that tiny toy in our palms. Educations are not limited to classrooms, and I will talk about that too because it's one of my favorite topics. That superimposing phrase, don't talk when elders are talking, have you heard of it? If you have, then you'll have to work doubly hard to build that personality you're aiming for or the society expects from you. Because if you were told to respect the flow of thoughts of anyone else but you, that would mean to say you have in some way decided for yourself that you're not good enough. But if those elders hadn't shouted at you while they were talking about some life-changing reality and looked at you with enthusiasm and hope, now that's the meaning of true coronation. No need flowers, music, arty stuff, dance, food, or anything fancy associated with it after distribution of invitation cards. A smile would suffice, and survive too when you think about it. The role of education in building personalities would be as simple as that. Thank goodness for my parents' parenting skills. That was not the case at home. My dad's name converts to the name of the world's most famous leader, which also means he has no idea what sorrow means. And my mom, her name means east, the direction in which we all know the sun rises. The universe is stuck with the notion that the sun will rise and the moon too will rise. So, ideally, the situation is there's no reason to panic or feel sorrow. Being born to them makes it obvious that sorrow was only introduced to my sister and me from other influences. But because our DNA didn't recognize it and we knew only one skill, that's how to be a catalyst of happiness, we eventually became teachers to kids. Why kids? Because they are the purest form of life. I got to talk, express myself through words, spoken, written, sang out when I needed to with my own lyrics, danced, performed, or only shot out facial expressions and basically excelled at body language over years of living and not practicing. It's only in my DNA to be expressive. I only got to know that there were such restrictions to speech when I went to high school or even when to common social gatherings that had elderly people talking crap. Crap? Because it had conversations that were metaphoric into demons laughing at me with a body language that read, "Tough luck, kid. It's hard enough to recognize all the demons in the same universe, let alone trying to slay them." Or take your so called profound observation somewhere else and let me grow in gossip and negative conversations. That's also the role of education in your community of the nice people. It's very easy to pull that smile out and let your clean, shiny teeth be a reflector and say, "I love challenges." And I promise you from right this same instance that explained time to all of us that I'll continue to be the flower in your coronation. Never has the word of a therapist gone wrong. And that's not ego talking. That's equality, singing out praises of self-love and awareness. The funny reality is yin and yang, they both have one thing in common, and that is conscious. The censor boards have age restrictions, restricted content, and it's working well for us now. Ever thought why though? It's scary, but I've thought about it extensively and figured it out that the reason it is a lot of us have gotten used to knowing that our views are not going to be heard, let alone being appreciated. We were so used to hearing the voices of those elders from the adjacent rooms while studying and preparing ourselves to earn a living that we shut ourselves off. A lot of us respected our elders so much that we gave them the absolute authority to decide our goals in life without even consulting us. Now, many or most of those elders are either on their deathbed or have actually moved on to the other side. They had taken charge of our education. All we needed to do was to build our personality. So now, that leaves us thinking what our personality actually is like. We are able to mold ourselves. We can smile when we are actually broken on the inside. We long to hear those voices but still wish they'd spoken on our behalf. We search for them in our kids and let them tell us what to do because we just love being told what to do. And that's not essentially a bad thing if the suggestions are for our benefit and for the benefit of the wider society, the universe as we all love to call it. After all, we did all that shutting down and molding our conscience so that we can earn a living for our children. From the very beginning of life, we were clearly explained that we needed to be successful, making money, in other words, and not to be happy or enjoy our lives simply because we needed to cater to more people. That's the role of education in our reality. The personalities that said it to us were so charismatic that we believed them, not just for us, but for generations together. The matrix of success could simply be to be comfortable with ourselves. The only thing we are born with, our body, our mind, and our soul. It was always at aiming for something which was mercilessly out of reach, and then it was about spending the rest of our lives at achieving that far-fetched goal. So, education definitely has a huge impact in our personality development. Everything I've just said sounds rather very demotivating, and a few really don't put education in the brightest of lights. Maybe because there's a huge difference between educations and, as we know it, Maybe because there's a huge difference between educations as we know it and the learning things. And most importantly, how is that communicated? For example, learning when to push the pedal of a bicycle and lifting your feet off the ground is directly proportional to the size of your smile. But education makes that exact same thing into two science subjects called physics and biology. It then breaks it down even further till we can prove it through diagrams and formulas that the push of a muscle in the leg is what pushes the bicycle against gravity. I wonder why that's important to do though. Why couldn't we as kids simply learn through exams conducted in the playgrounds? If it was about scrutinizing our spellings and handwriting, then we could have written what was in our minds as stories, poems, articles, or anything that was interesting enough that we would focus on making the best presentation. I'm glad that EdTech is now emerging as world leaders in the way we teach our next generation. Reading, writing, coding, online method of study, letting kids play outside, and so they build their socio-economic skills and resistance or immunity towards diseases. Even my 7-year-old son knows what bitcoins are because of his friends, random online people and real people he talks to discussing about bitcoins. He's absolutely sure that he wants to be a bus driver or an auto rickshaw driver when he grows up. And as I understand, he may also want to be a bitcoins trader. In class, though, he gets absolutely bored. Just like how I used to, and a few of my clients' kids were diagnosed with ADHD due to. All of us, we had a few things in common. Our notebooks were filled with drawings. Our textbooks were mainly huge paragraphs with little humor. We knew the topics of the class that we conducted way before the schools reopened. We read through those chapters, spoke to our folks about it, did our mental research, and then waited for school to reopen only to listen to those interesting debates that could happen. But that never happened. What happened was one person stood in front of the class and dictated notes that we had to quickly write neatly too with the correct spellings and then get the same thing checked by the same person who dictated it and in the first place, and then they would put some random numbers on it and said that that is what we were worth. We were worth those numbers. If they didn't like those numbers, they informed the principal and our parents were invited to school. But nothing was amazing after that. There were heaps of complaints and there were demands negotiated about how they could choose better numbers to write in our book pages. This went on for a few years and eventually I decided not to study. I had a boyfriend who later became the father of Kabir, spoke about everything but study. And then when we did study, it was so amazing. We could talk, laugh, giggle, put things into perspective, and make fun of all those who looked extremely agitated when we didn't do exactly what they wanted us to do. Today, he runs an international event management company, and I have learned to master businesses through administration. Finally, funnily enough, after almost 2 decades of corporate experience, I'm now a full-time teacher. I volunteer at a rural school where I am a counselor, so that excuses me from making my students memorize concepts and it gives me the liberty to talk to them as a buddy and understand their understanding of gravity, muscles, strength, the food they need to eat to push that pedal, the right time to go out and ride the bicycle, the amount of oil or lubrication the chain that the chain requires. So touching base with physics, geography, biology, EVS, social science, and language. Their emotional success is the highlight of my sessions with them. And the other part of my life goes towards being an ed tech trainer too, who again does the same thing, impacts lives of students or parents who blindly now follow the norms, but also want their children to excel at public speaking, speaking their hearts out, and all that with a positive personality for kids living in Canada, America, and Texas. Why did I say that I earned 10,000? I haven't specified the currency, and that's the role of education in my personality. Let's shift our focus towards the safety nets we have for our parents and children. Not so much for us because growing up we didn't have so many protective gears. It makes us look like with protective gears, we look like we are walking the ramp, or for a few of us, it's merely claustrophobic. We were learning on the go. We saw too much. We were exposed to a lot of ideas, emotions, and conversations with zero threat to our parenting style. Did that make us more confident and comfortable in any situation? Well, I would definitely think so. We built our confidence because we were pushed into situations that we weren't ready for. For instance, the boy or the girl whose name starts with A always was the teacher's favorite roll call number. I'm not saying that it wasn't stressful. It was, and it all means it was. But I think we emerged as complete men, women, teams, and friends. I believe that the equation has changed now. It's yet to be determined if the newer generation are comfortable with their methods or are struggling to cope. I guess time will tell. There are always two sides of a situation, and for me, up until now, it has been quite a ride growing up. Yes, seriously, it has been. I'm all of 41 years old and still growing. Just today, I was talking to one of my clients. I'm a counselor, helping people getting in touch with their true selves, knowing simple ways of falling back in love with their names and finding that purpose to look forward in life. In other words, I'm evolving as a life coach, mentor, and a professional who enjoys psychological dissections. So, as I was saying, I spoke to my client, and I'll share with you one of the tips finding the peace that I have learned over time. The tips of finding peace that I have learned over time. It's not particularly a free tip. I have hope that there is a potential to earn those 80,000 by the end of your reading. So here goes. We grow for as long as we have the growth mindset. It's what is promoted through several researchers and studies that consider continual improvement and growth strategies to be the core of a successful lifestyle. I've tweaked it a bit and achieved enormous victory. When we interchange our words, our understanding and absorption of those concepts starts becoming our DNA. We start evolving, and that's when success can be a pedestal that we can simply and happily leave behind. Winning and awards, badges, and certificates, even educational mementos, become nothing more than a handcrafted tiara that we can imbibe in ourselves. It's relishing the journey and no longer having an eye out for the final destination. The target can simply be the feeling of research orgasm, the euphoric jumbling up of bodily and mental exhaustion and finding answers and enabling our own selves in experiencing it firsthand. That's what education would be proud of. I learned to walk. But then again, someone in school or maybe my parents taught me to walk the talk. And that's what welcomed me here today. Just knowing how to read words or copying text from another book or even the internet for that matter doesn't mean much unless I'm able to understand what it really means. It's the actual use of the concepts in my life and in the lives of those I'm in connection with is what education essentially means. I learned to read the EEs, the ABCs, and the 1, 2, 3s. But in all honesty, what really has been memorable for me is how it was sung to me. The sweetness in the voice of my teachers, the smiles they smiled, the way the only thing that mattered to them was the wonderful time they were having while watching my personality getting built. We all look forward to making this world a much better version of what it already is today. Each and every day is a creative new beginning. Either it's the technology that sends people to outer space, or the simple logic of relativity, or TCP/IP I study in my books. Is the ever growing concern of global warming or the fact that trees are the main sources for carpenters building masterpieces. It's education that tells my friends, my family, and me that new traits, new variants of COVID 19 has literally created havoc all over our planet. And it's also education towards hygiene that tells me that prevention is better than cure. All I need to do is wash my hands and cover up as much as I can to avoid any infection. Or I can become stronger than the variant, and that's trying to demonize me. So, then again, what is the meaning of personal development? Essentially, that's my perspective over things, my personality, isn't it? It is education that builds us, develops the way we conduct ourselves in front of others, in isolation, in our comfort zones, or even when we are under pressure. The stories in our books, the events of history, the widespread love for education are the true curators of our existence. Today, there are an overwhelming number of apps available for download on our smartphones. Most of the contents of the digital communication are to do with smart personalities, crisp conversations, quick calls, and deliberate articles. The level of awareness and character is overwhelming. It's the era where the baby boomers have given way to the idealistic cult. The population is flooding with ideas and thoughts that are not just radically revolutionary, but its newness is contagiously logical. It's imperative to mention dignitaries here. Swami Vivekananda. He studied literature, converted himself to different religions to explore the world of spirituality, learned music, traveled the world, and showcased his abilities built on the basis of education. And today, he stands out as one of the most admired personalities of the generation. Gandhi. Not a day goes without bringing up a discussion regarding him. A barrister by profession, and how casually he disrupted global businesses in a time when obviousness wasn't appreciated. A personality groomed via education, and to be remembered for another few hundred years, if not 1,000. Shining people of the recent times: Kalpana Chawla, space traveler, a scientist; R.K. Narayan, eminent writer; Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft; Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google; Indira Nooyi, head of PepsiCo Global; Raj Subramaniam from FedEx; the most recent sensation, Rishi Sunak. The list goes on to prove that perfect personalities, charisma, and success stories are outcomes of fantastic and quality education. Personality is developed when we look at the bigger picture, when we are able to take a step back and watch things from a holistic point of view. It's not in arguments that we win, it's not in becoming prize winners to show that we've won. It's in growing as a nation, growing in teams that make us come across as successful. The truest ever metric of being a leader is to be accompanied by smart personalities of equal or higher intellect and emotional value. And that is governed by the law of attraction. We send vibes out to the universe every millisecond of our existence, and in return, we are recipients and transmitters of the same. The only thing we do have under control is the only thing we do have control over is the catalyst we wish to be at every coronation experience during those milliseconds or even smaller time durations, which eventually is the essence of the halo we adorn our brain with, the infamous corona of the recent times. It's taken me a few minutes to articulate the words beaming in my heart, my soul, and my mind to bring to your notice that each moment I'm learning something new. I may be in school listening to my mentors or watching the little ones play. I could be doing a science project or participating in an inter-school competition. I could be even playing a game on the internet, mentoring my students, discussing topics with their parents and my colleagues, spending my intimate moments of truth with my lover, watching my child exhibit beauty in his existence, appreciating my family, my parents, and most importantly, my sister. Her name translates into the feeling of calmness or numbness after being intoxicated by a fruit. Our parents are worth the admiration I feel for them in all those moments of coronation that I live by every single day. I don't have an option but to become a better version of myself constantly. I'm constantly learning, and my aura is positively impacting lives way beyond horizons. I'm humble, but yet so proud of my personal development. That's the role of education I have imparted over years and will continue to do so because I'm passionate and honestly, I don't know anything more than that. Today has been an absolute pleasure to be able to stand up here and talk to you wonderful people about what I think is the driver of my cognitive development. I believe that if I continue with the same dedication, hard work, and integrity towards my education, nothing can stop me from being that awesome person that even you would want to work with, either now or in future. The world is round, and even if it was flat, we are connected in more ways than we can imagine. Thank you so much for your time and your patience in listening to me today. It would be awesome if you it would be awesome to know your views, and the way you can connect to this terrestrial being is through my LinkedIn profile. Please have a wonderful day or a night ahead, as I will most certainly do.